Hello and welcome to my podcast. I'm going to jump right into it. Many people consider technology as strictly a tangible thing, like phones or computers or cars or planes and other machines. Others can extend or consider the definition to include things like software or techniques like architecture. However, a lot of people overlook the idea that ancient technologies or things that we still utilize today are technologies. These are a little more unethereal, a little more untangible. These are things like language. And today we're going to be exploring the very idea of government. I consider government to be a technology because it is something that evolves over time, and it's a pivotal item in how we live our day-to-day lives. Pretty much every single individual or human today, or at least a majority of which, live within a government now and live their whole lives in a government. Today, I'm going to go over the concepts of what government is, a little bit of its history, and how it relates to AI. I did enlist the aid of ChatGPT to go over the historic elements of it, and I'm using GPT-4 to do so. I'm also utilizing a large portion of my own personal knowledge of how governments work and how they're established, and I'm using one of my favorite books of all time, Homo Deus by Yuval Noah Harari, which has a chapter called The Human Agenda, which explores much of human development and sets the stage for the potential future trajectory that we may be undergoing. Of the answers that I got from GPT-4, it listed 8 items approximately within chronological order, starting off with ancient governments. So these are early forms of government emerged in river valley civilizations such as Mesopotamia and Egypt, in the Indus Valley, and in China. These are typically monarchies where the rulers were often regarded as divine or semi-divine, right? So very primordial renditions of government. Then it goes into classical antiquity, which I believe, and this is from my own knowledge, is the sort of starting point of what a lot of modern governments are established as today. And it says the concept of democracy was introduced notably by the Greeks in Athens, where citizens could participate directly in decision making. And this is an important facet that we need to keep in mind. Participation here, not simply being ruled over by an overseer, is the fundamental crux of what makes up a democracy, right? And the Roman Republic combined democratic processes with oligarchic and autocratic elements, eventually transitioning into an imperial regime under the Roman Empire. So we have the emergence of it, but not necessarily the widespread adoption yet. The next one is medieval systems. So we have feudalism. I would consider this another step back. Feudalism dominated a large portion in an area of history. And then we have the Renaissance and Reformation. And we have colonialism and empires. And the next item was modern democracy and constitutions. This is where we find this resurgence of this idea of democracy. And it says, inspired by the Enlightenment ideals, the American and French revolutions of the 18th century promoted liberty, equality, and democracy, leading to the creation of constitutions that limited government power and protected individuals' rights. So here, this is a flourishing of this idea of governmental ability to be utilized for the sake of individuals and for the sake of the people to hopefully better their quality of life, right? The next step is the 20th century global shifts, right? Things like World War I and World War II, where governmental entities clashed, and we have more contemporary governments, right? And it says modern governments vary widely from democracies to authoritarian regimes, all facing challenges like globalization, technological changes, and issues such as climate change and migration. So these are all things that we are currently living with today, but they all stem from this technology of government, right? Whatever shape or form they may take. And currently, we have multiple governments that have multiple shapes and forms. Today, we have what we call large language models, right? And we have a lot of startups. Arguably, a lot of these are only feasible within the realm of a government, right? The TED Talk that I utilize, which is a very good video, I highly recommend you watch it. The speaker discusses the shift from a bipolar to unipolar global power structure, right? Going from the U.S. and Russia, right, within or before the collapse of the Soviet Union, and then to the U.S. being a unipolar hegemon, right? But the U.S. has been subsequently losing influence and ability as other countries garner power. And the conclusion that the individual comes to is that we're going to have a tripolar sort of effect, where it's going to be the U.S., it's going to be China, but then the third element will be technology itself, right? And this raises a profound question about the role of AI in legislation, right? Over time, policy has only been something that is categorized by humans, right? The technology of government means that individuals will make a policy, and better or for worse, that policy will be enacted, but it stems from the will of certain individuals for a certain outcome. And we have this dilemma, right? Could AI possibly write legislation more effectively than humans? It's a fundamental challenge to our understanding of free will, and the human-led government, right, is what we've had. And obviously, evidently, it's not perfect. I'm sure if you ask every single person on earth, they'll tell you either their government is not perfect or their surrounding and neighboring governments are not perfect, right? But this shift from a human-led government to an AI-led government, especially because this development in AI prompts large technological companies and this heavy development into artificial intelligence, right? But it ultimately removes our own urgency from it. And in conclusion, right, the trajectory of government as a technology, we see that not only is it a tool, right, to create structure for people and individuals, but it has a profound influence on how people live. Before the advent of government, right, many people were still hunter-gatherers, right? And that is something that fundamentally makes us human. And the more modernized governments and the power of democracy is what allows us to consider ourselves to be more human, and it's a technology that we hold dear. What happens when there's a collision of these two facets? What does it even mean to be human anymore? Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.